One of the little things I love in The Lord of the Rings has to do with Merry. And it's actually become quite a big thing, for me anyway, because after I first really paid attention to this little moment, I started to seriously look at what Merry does throughout the story, and eventually came to recognize Merry as Merry, which is to say, separate and distinct from his fellow hobbits, especially Pippin. Because before this, he had always been, for me, just one of the other hobbits. I mean, there's Frodo and there's Sam, and there's the other two. Merry and Pippin, Merry and Pippin, Merry and Pippin. Practically interchangeable, but definitely a unit. Kind of like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Not so now. Merry is quite his own character, and I have to say, my favorite of all the hobbits. But let's get to that moment, which is something that I glossed over many times in my readings over the years. It takes place in the Two Towers, at the beginning of the Uruk-hai chapter, where we are in Pippin's head, and revealed is everything that happened back at Parthgalen to get him and Merry into this fix of being captured by the orcs. Then suddenly they had crashed right into a group of orcs. They were standing listening, and they did not appear to see Merry and Pippin until they were almost in their arms. Then they yelled, and dozens of other goblins had sprung out of the trees. Merry and he had drawn their swords, but the orcs did not wish to fight, and had tried only to lay hold of them, even when Merry had cut off several of their arms and hands. Good old Merry. Then Boromir had come leaping through the trees. He had made them fight. He slew many. Boromir had blown his great horn till the woods rang, and at first the orcs had been dismayed and drawn back. But when no answer but the echoes came, they had attacked more fiercely than ever. Pippin did not remember much more. His last memory was of Boromir leaning against a tree, plucking out an arrow. Then darkness fell suddenly. It's a terrific scene, but did you catch what I'm talking about? As I say, I always kind of glossed over it in the past. But this time I said, did he just say Merry had cut off several of their arms and hands? Good old Merry just doesn't seem to cut it in that case. I mean, that's a major deal. That's warrior stuff, at least on a Hobbit scale anyway. Now, admittedly, Pippin may be exaggerating, and several may not mean 6 to 8. It could mean just 3 or 4. And certainly the barrow blade Merry was wielding probably helped, this being the sword acquired at the Barrow Downs, and which had been forged for use in the war against the Witch King of Angmar some 1600 years prior. That sword was surely made to kill orcs, among other things, so it had to have had added some bonus points for Merry. Not to mention the fact that the orcs were not fighting back. They had orders to apprehend the halflings. If they had had orders to kill them, it would surely have been a different story, as Boromir found out. But that isn't the case, and the text stands. Cut off several of their arms and hands. And when I really read that phrase, I thought, dang, Merry, how awesome are you? From that point in my reading, I started following what we can call the Merry thread throughout the rest of the book. And when I did my next reading, I read The Lord of the Rings every year, I did it again from the beginning. And throughout it all, that essential awesomeness of the character as seen in that moment really came into focus for me. We see it right in the prologue, because there we find that Merry has written a book, Herblore of the Shire. A great deal of mystery surrounds the origin of this peculiar custom, or art, as the hobbits prefer to call it. Smoking pipeweed, that is. All that could be discovered about it in antiquity was put together by Meriadoc Brandybuck, later Master of Buckland. 9 chapters from there, we'll find out, at least as far as the hobbits in Bree go, that the writing of books is astonishing. Presumably, books are numerous enough in the Shire that one of Bilbo's birthday party gifts is as follows. For the collection of Hugo Bracegirdle, from a contributor, on an empty bookcase. Hugo was a great borrower of books, and worse than usual at returning them. It's not clear who wrote the books that Hugo accumulates, but as far as what we're presented within the text, we know of 4 authors in the Shire: Bilbo, Frodo, Sam, and Merry. After Bilbo's birthday party and his exodus from Meriadoc, we learn that Merry is the one who escorts Lobelia Sackville Baggins out of Bag End, something Frodo doesn't even want to do. And let's be clear of ages here. Frodo, at this point in the story, is 33. A quick look at the family trees in the appendices shows us that he is 14 years older than Merry. So Merry right now is only 19, barely even into his irresponsible tweens. And yet he is responsible enough, we are told, to deal with these awful folks, speaking politely to them as he does. The Sackville Bagginses, by the way, are both nearing 90 at this point. And also, to be clear, Merry is not just a member of the Brandybuck family. As the prologue revealed, he is in line to become the Master of Buckland, or Master of the Hall, whose authority is supreme in that region of the Shire, and we are told is still acknowledged by the farmers between Stock and Rushy, which means a considerable amount of territory that the Master has authority over. So you have to figure that there must be some grooming going on, some training of Merry, with an awareness of the position he is to take in the world. Clearly Merry has taken to it and learned a lot already. Cut to 17 years later, when the action of the trilogy really kicks in. Merry is 36, and for comparison purposes, Frodo is 50, Sam 38, Pippin 29, and Fatty Bolger 39. And we learn that of the hobbits working on Frodo's behalf, Merry is put in charge of finding him a house in Crickhollow. This makes sense, as Merry is from that part of the Shire. But once the move to Crickhollow is made, we discover a few more things. Not only has Merry gotten the house to look as much like Bag End as possible, and gotten ready the ponies and the baggage for the journey that they are to go on, he also does this. Merry led them down the passage and threw open a door at the far end. Firelight came out, and a puff of steam. "A bath!" cried Pippin. "Oh, blessed Meriadoc!" "Which order shall we go in?" said Frodo. "Eldest first or quickest first? You'll be last either way, Master Peregrine." "Trust me to arrange things better than that," said Merry. "We can't begin life at Crickhollow with a quarrel over baths. In that room there are 3 tubs, and a copper full of boiling water. There are also towels, mats, and soap. Get inside and be quick." I mean, bathtubs? Who thinks of bathtubs? Let's face it, here is a jewel among hobbits. As the conspiracy is unmasked, that being the plot among Sam, Merry, Pippin, and Fatty to aid Frodo in his escape from the Shire, we find out that Merry has been aware of the ring for quite a while now. He tells Frodo, "One day, a year before the party, I happened to be walking along the road when I saw Bilbo ahead. Suddenly, in the distance, the SBs, the Sackville Bagginses, appeared, coming towards us. Bilbo slowed down, and then, hey, presto, he vanished. I was peeping through into the road after the SBs had passed, and was looking straight at Bilbo when he suddenly reappeared. I caught a glint of gold as he put something back in his trouser pocket." Merry also admits to having had a peek at Bilbo's book. Surely an example of irresponsible tween behavior, doing something he wasn't supposed to. But unlike Frodo stealing mushrooms from Farmer Maggot, Merry is reading books. After the conspiracies reveal, the direction they intend to go is through the Old Forest, worked out by, guess who, Merry. This is not to Fatty's liking, and he considers it quite as dangerous as the Black Riders themselves. But Merry disagrees. "With luck, we might get a considerable start," he says. "But you won't have any luck in the Old Forest," objected Fredegar. "No one ever has luck in there. You'll get lost. People don't go in there." "Oh, yes, they do," said Merry. "The Brandybucks go in. Occasionally, when the fit takes them. We have a private entrance." The Old Forest is the stuff of nightmares. Fatty says he is more afraid of it than of anything that he knows about. But Merry dismisses those fears as old bogey stories that his nurses used to tell him. At least I don't believe them, he says. But he does admit the forest is queer. Everything in it is very much more alive, more aware of what is going on, so to speak, than things are in the Shire. And the trees do not like strangers. They watch you. Occasionally, the most unfriendly ones may drop a branch, or stick a root out, or grasp at you with a long trailer. They do say the trees do actually move, and can surround strangers and hem them in. A couple of things here. One, it's important to remember that whenever queer is used in The Lord of the Rings, it's the original usage of the word, meaning simply weird or strange. Two, despite his admission of the potential danger of the forest, there's a certain matter-of-factness about Merry's description. It's kind of no big deal. I mean, the Brandybucks go in, and through their own private entrance to boot. And of course, it's important to recall the last time in the book that we had descriptions of trees doing things that trees don't normally do. This would be the discussion between Sam and Ted Sandyman back in the Shadow of the Past chapter, where Sam talks of these tree men, these giants as you might call them, and how his cousin Hal had seen one, walking no less. But to the rest of the Green Dragon, that's all just old bogey stories too, and not even scary ones at that. Yet here, we see Merry is quite aware of the animated nature of trees, and doesn't appear all that scared of it. As they proceed into the forest, we get this curious passage from Merry. Not far from this tunnel there is, or was for a long time, the beginning of quite a broad path leading to the bonfire glade, and then on more or less in our direction, east and a little north. That is the path I am going to try and find. I say it's curious because, to my ear, that sounds like the words of a certain ranger that we, and they, are going to meet in just a few days. To wit, I think the best thing is to go as straight eastward from here as we can, to make for the line of hills, not for Weathertop. There we can strike a path I know that runs at their feet. Does Merry have the makings of a ranger, too? They still have a ways to go before they meet Strider, of course, and they quickly experience the closeness and eerie silence of the old forest. It gets so bad that Pippin shouts at the trees to let them pass. Merry tells him, again kind of matter-of-factly, I should not shout if I were you. It does more harm than good. To ease their minds, Frodo sings a song, but Merry admonishes him for it. They do not like all that about ending and failing, said Merry. I should not sing any more at present. Again, remember those ages. Pippin is the youngest, but Frodo is the oldest, and yet Merry directs each on what they should be doing. Of course, he should have listened to his own advice, because a little later he points out the line of the Withywindle, the river which runs through the old forest, and says, we don't want to go that way. The Withywindle Valley is said to be the queerest part of the whole wood, the center from which all the queerness comes, as it were. And of course, what happens after Merry says this? Well, I would say that the trees heard him, and like what he had said earlier about how the trees can surround strangers and hem them in, these trees force the four hobbits in the very direction Merry said that they should not go, which leads them right into the clutches of Old Man Willow. So okay, he's not perfect, but the old forest is no common adversary either. By the time they get to Bree, Merry is back in a kind of command mode. He speaks quite decisively to Harry the Gate Warden about being let in. I am Mr. Brandybuck, is that enough for you? And he is the only one of the four hobbits with any sense to stay out of the common room at the Prancing Pony. He admonishes yet again, mind your P's and Q's, and don't forget that you are supposed to be escaping in secret, and are still on the high road and not very far from the Shire. Alas, this warning does little good. The next time we see Merry, a lot has happened. The hobbits have met Strider, and have agreed to let him lead them from here. They're so busy with this encounter, though, that they have forgotten about Merry. Where is that silly fellow? Well, Merry came in with a rush, followed by Nob. He shut the door hastily, and leaned against it. He was out of breath. They stared at him in alarm for a moment before he gasped, "I have seen them, Frodo. I have seen them. Black riders." Merry has gone outside and seen something horrible, and he followed it. He then gets a taste of the black breath of the Nazgul as a reward for this. But he also gets something else. Because after he tells what happened, what does the text tell us? Strider looked at Merry with wonder. Wonder? From Strider? "You have a stout heart," he said, "but it was foolish." If you forget that last bit about being foolish, this is seriously high praise. I mean, if you could have the approval of anyone in the Lord of the Rings world, wouldn't Aragorn be at the top of your list? And it's Merry who gets that. And this, I would say, is a good thing from Strider's point of view. Because consider his position here. As noble as he is, as impressive as he is, as powerful as he is, and as aware as he is of how important what is going on with the ring happens to be, you can't help but think that he's none too pleased to be stuck helping these kind, jolly, and stupid hobbits who have done some absurd things so far, not the least of which was Frodo having the ring get on his finger and disappearing in front of the entire Prancing Pony patrons. And yet, you have to feel he has some hope. And why? Because Merry is here. And we keep seeing how Merry and Strider are kind of linked in a way as they progress on from here. As soon as it was light, we are told at one point, Strider took Merry with him and went to survey the country from the height to the east of the pass. When they come to the troll hole, the text reads, Strider, Sam, and Merry, pushing with all their strength, managed to open the door a little wider. And then Strider and Merry went in. Sam will do great things, no question, later on. Right now, though, there appears to be no way he is going into that troll hole if he can avoid it. But Merry will. Of course, Merry does get freaked out by the stone trolls, but we'll cut him some slack there. It's a journey. And the journey gets him to Rivendell along with the rest. Once there, he, at least, uses his time to look at some maps, as is revealed later on in the Two Towers when he says to Pippin, I don't suppose you have much notion of where we are, but I spent my time in Rivendell rather better. And then, as they come to the doors of Durin, guess who it is who points out the password? I was wrong after all, said Gandalf, and Gimli too. Merry, of all people, was on the right track. He's referring to Merry's comment when they get to the doors of, what does it mean by speak, friend, and enter? Granted, he has no idea he is on the right track, but we'll take it. Then we get to Lothlorien, and Celeborn offers the company boats, naming Legolas, Aragorn, and Boromir as being able to handle them. And what is the reaction to that? And one hobbit, cried Merry. Not all of us look on boats as wild horses. Are you sensing a trend here? And I think at this point it's useful to do a little Merry to Pippin comparison, since again, they always do seem a kind of package deal. Merry and Pippin, Merry and Pippin, Merry and Pippin. But very distinct in their differences. Because among the things that Pippin has done so far on this journey are complaining about sleeping out of doors, shouting at the trees in the old forest, just about to start talking about Bilbo and Bree, calling Frodo Lord of the Ring in Rivendell, not consulting any maps in Rivendell, saying at the doors of Durin, what are you going to do then? To which Gandalf replies, knock on the doors with your head, Peregrine Took. Not jumping across the 7-foot crack in the floor in Moria without serious prodding from the rest of the company. And, of course, dropping a stone into the well in Moria, for which he is called Fool of a Took. Are you sensing a trend there? I do forgive Pippin, as he is the youngest, and he very much has a journey of his own to go through. But in a way, a lot of that journey has to be comparing himself to Merry. Because after Lothlorien, and the ride down the River Anduin, we have the encounter with the orcs, which involved that cutting off of several arms and hands of the orcs by Merry, which started all this. Pippin knows what Merry did there, and has done up to this point, and with Merry unconscious for most of the forced march that the orcs put them through, it makes sense that Pippin might possibly be thinking, what would Merry do in this situation? And here, Pippin begins to do some very good stuff of his own, such as cutting the cords that bind his hands and keeping that fact hidden, dropping the Lothlorien brooch so that Aragorn will find it, and messing with Grishnach's head and confusing him about whether they might actually be in possession of the precious, which allows him and Merry to escape before Éomer and company trample them to death. One might call these inspired actions. And if so, who would they have been inspired by? Well, I can think of someone. Of course, it is as a pair that Merry and Pippin help to rouse the Ents to action against Saruman, and then as a pair to greet Gandalf, Theoden, and the rest when they at last make it to Isengard. Then Pippin loses whatever goodwill he has earned up to that point by, in essence, going off on his own and looking into the Palantir. Before that, we have this wonderful exchange which sets Merry back on a course of him being separate from Pippin. It begins with a simple question from Merry to Gandalf as they share Shadowfax. Are we riding far tonight? After Gandalf goes on a bit too long with his response, Merry says, It is a greater honor to dangle at your tail, Gandalf. For one thing, in that position one has a chance of putting a question a second time. Are we riding far tonight? Which draws a laugh from Gandalf, and his declaration of Merry being a most unquenchable hobbit. We at last get Merry and Pippin officially separated, and Merry is able to swear allegiance to Theoden. With war on the horizon, the king tells Merry he cannot come, to which Merry insists, It is a long way to run, but run I shall if I cannot ride, even if I wear my feet off and arrive weeks too late. And you get the feeling that he would. I mean, this is Sam level of devotion being revealed here, I should say. To the king, to the cause, to his friends, but also to himself. Because that's who Merry is. Devoted, dedicated, and again, pretty darn awesome. And of course, get there he does, to the Battle of the Pelennor Field, dangling at the tail of Durnhelm, who is revealed to be Éowyn, as she faces no less an opponent than the Lord of the Nazgul himself. Out of the wreck rose the Black Rider, tall and threatening, towering above her. With a cry of hatred that stung the very ears like venom, he let fall his mace. Her shield shivered in many pieces, and her arm was broken. She stumbled to her knees. He bent over her like a cloud, and his eyes glittered. He raised his mace to kill. But suddenly he too stumbled forward, with a cry of bitter pain, and his stroke went wide, driving into the ground. Merry's sword had stabbed him from behind, shearing through the black mantle, and, passing up beneath the hauberk, had pierced the sinew behind his mighty knee. Again, it is the barrow blade that he uses, that work of Westerness. But glad would he have been to know its fate who wrought it slowly long ago in the North Kingdom, when the Dunedain were young, and chief among their foes was the dread realm of Angmar and its sorcerer king, who of course is the Lord of the Nazgul. No other blade, not though mightier hands had wielded it, would have dealt that foe a wound so bitter, cleaving the undead flesh, breaking the spell that knit his unseen sinews to his will. Which of course is fantastic stuff, but I think the key here is that, like at the doors of Durin, Merry did not know any of that. All he knows is that Éowyn is facing a terrible enemy and about to be killed, and he has to do whatever he can to help her. It is a great help that this sword of his is the perfect one for the job, but he would have done what he did regardless of what was in his hand. This deed, of course, keeps Merry out of the action as they move towards Mordor, but not out of mind. Later, when Pippin is at the Black Gate, his thoughts are of Merry. And it's not simply, I wish Merry were here, like he is in the movie, because he's not in the book. Here, it's Pippin thinking of the mouth of Sauron. If only I could smite that foul messenger, then almost I should draw level with old Merry. Merry is now the bar. The height of hobbitry, one might say. Now, he's not there. He's back in Minas Tirith in the Houses of Healing. but despite his wounds, he's not idle. He's become the go-between for Faramir and Éowyn, and has a small part to play in their blossoming romance. The temptation is great to sing Matchmaker, Matchmaker, Meriadoc, but I don't think I will. I'd rather jump right ahead to the scouring of the Shire, where the four hobbits have returned to do, as Gandalf indicates, what they have been trained to do. In this case, to rouse the Shire and rid it of the ruffians sent here by Saruman. For this task, it's Merry who takes charge. "Bill Ferny," said Merry, "if you don't open that gate in 10 seconds, you'll regret it. I shall set steel to you if you don't obey. And when you have opened the gates, you will go through them and never return." Then later, Pippin speaks of taking cover, and Merry says no. "It's no good getting under cover. That is just what people have been doing and just what these ruffians like. They will simply come down on us in force, corner us, and then drive us out, or burn us in. No, we have got to do something at once." "Do what?" said Pippin. "Raise the Shire," said Merry. "Now!" He now sounds the horn call of Buckland, using the horn he was given as a gift by Éowyn. And it has such an effect that Sam, who was riding off to the Cottons just at that moment, almost turns around and comes back. Merry's call is that commanding. As the battle is coming, Merry says, "We'll try to deal with them neatly, but we must be prepared for the worst. Now, I've got a plan." To which Frodo says, "Very good. You make the arrangements." And when the ruffians come, Merry stepped forward. The leader of the gang aimed a savage blow at Merry, who stood in his way. He is front and center, always in the lead, and it's his horn blasts that bring out every hobbit in Hobbiton. Merry now had enough sturdy hobbitry to deal with the ruffians, and Merry laid his plans quickly. Pippin does get into the mix too, at least, leading 100 Tooks from Tookborough. And when the last of the ruffians need to be hunted out, we are told it was left to Merry and Pippin, and it was soon done. So they are together as a unit again, as they will be throughout their lives. In Merry's case, he becomes the Master of Buckland 13 years later, at which point we are told he is known as the Magnificent. Well, I discovered that magnificence a little bit late in the game, but there it was for me, and I cannot unsee it, nor do I want to. And it all started with the mere cutting off of several orc arms and hands. And that's why that moment is one of the little things I love in The Lord of the Rings. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day.